You're listening to The Upland Rookie, a podcast presented by Onyx Hunt, Final Rise, and Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. And welcome to episode 84 with Todd Agnew from Spaniel Journal. And this podcast is also presented to you by Onyx Hunt, the most comprehensive public and private land ownership data mapping tool in the world. Many tools and layers like crop types, tree species, waypoints, and so much more. The Onyx Elite membership is going to give you a ton of access to a whole bunch of benefits, discounts on awesome gear. If you're not using Onyx Hunt already, I highly encourage you, get over to onyxhunt.com and sign up today. And be sure to check out Inukshuk Professional Dog Food, the only sporting dog, high-performance dog food I'm feeding my string of dogs. Have been using this for several years, and Inukshuk has delivered and lived up to and surpassed all the hype you've been hearing about online through friends, kennels, breeders, all that. And it has just been a high-quality premium food. I've been able to cut back several cups of food for my dogs, still keeping weight on them during season, during trialing, whatever it might be. These dogs are in the best shape they've been in, personally, in a long, long time. And thanks to Inukshuk Professional Dog Food, they have 4 incredible formulas. Check them out at inukshukpro.com. And last but not least, Final Rise Gear. I am so pumped and proud to be representing the Final Rise brand. They have been producing year after year quality premium upland gear that is made for the hunter, the bird hunter who is putting on miles after miles, season after season, and wants gear to hold up to the elements of how you are hunting. You got to look no further than finalrise.com. Check out the Summit vest, the Summit XT vest, which is brand new, the Sidekick vest, as well as the Legacy. So many vest options, which are totally customizable. I'm pretty darn confident you're going to find something that works for you and your setup. So check them out at finalrise.com. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Upland Rookie Podcast. I'm your host, Will Larson. And as always, I'm so glad you guys are tuning in to today's episode. I am super pumped for this one. I recorded this one a couple weeks ago with Todd from Spaniel Journal. Talk with Todd a little bit about the Spaniel world. We dive into field trials with the Spaniels. We really unpack the Springer Spaniel as well as the Cocker. It's a fantastic conversation. I learned a ton this one, and it got me piqued. It got my interest piqued on a Spaniel. The Springer Spaniel, I'm just going to say. The Cocker seems awesome. Okay, the Cocker seems awesome. Todd unknowingly may have talked me into a Springer, or I should say being Springer curious. I should say that more appropriately. We're definitely not adding a dog anytime soon, but I don't know, something about these Flushing Spaniel dogs. I think it's a good one. Whether you run pointing dogs, whether you run flushers, I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's just a different perspective. Again, I know we talk a ton of pointing breeds on this on this show, so tune in. I think you're going to like this one, and it's a really good conversation with Todd. Other than that, guys, I'm going to keep this intro super short. Life has been a little bit crazy for me. Work, got some family stuff. Heading back to Chicago tomorrow. My grandma has been in the hospital. And moved to hospice, actually. So I'm actually flying back there tomorrow to say goodbye to her. And flying back, I got some crazy stuff going on at work. It's all good stuff. It's just life is a little crazy right now. So missed last week's episode. We're back with you today. And so it's another good conversation. But hey, I still have the giveaway happening for Patreon members over at the Patreon page / the Upland Rookie Podcast. Make sure you go get signed up over there. I'm giving away a Gunner Fan Kit 2.0 and an Upland Rookie hat to one lucky Patreon member. So make sure you're signed up. I'll be giving that away here pretty soon. Weather's starting to warm up a little bit. I think we were like almost 70 degrees here in Denver today. It was super nice. Had the dogs out running this morning, and it was nice. It was really, really nice. But it got me thinking about running the fans again because it's getting a little warm. Got to make sure you keep them cool. So the Gunner Fan Kit 2.0 is going to attach especially very nicely to the Gunner kennels. But you can really attach it to any kennel setup you have. It's got a long battery, stainless steel fan, so nothing's going to rust. You can be out in the elements, all that good stuff. So head over to patreon.com, get signed up, and you'll be entered to win the Gunner Fan Kit 2.0. Other than that, hope everyone is doing well. Not everyone. If you got out there to chase turkeys, hope everyone had a good time. Hopefully you had fun, had a safe hunt, made some memories with your kids or your family, or just a solo hunt for yourself. So again, as always, be sure to tag the Upland Rookie podcast in your post. I love resharing those. Love seeing what my listeners are experiencing out there, whether it's turkey season, bird season, training season, trialing, whatever it might be. Love seeing what you guys are doing out there. And so I'll definitely try to reshare some of those posts on the page. Other than that, guys, we're going to rock and roll into the interview here with Todd from Spaniel Journals. Enjoy. Put us on a map. Where are you talking to us from? And would you give us, the listeners, a little overview of who you are?
Sure. I'm in, I guess, Central East Georgia in Glasgow County. We've been down here for a bunch of years now, and my wife decided to move down here, so I followed her to get out of the weather, obviously in the north, like a lot of people do. But we operate out of here most of the year, but we do head north late summer and through the fall for hunting and access to the field trial circuit and so forth. We, like a lot of people, we grew up hunting and tried to turn a hobby into a business, and that's what we've been doing with a fair bit of success, I suppose. And specializing in the spaniels, as you know, it's what we love to do, and love to work with people and get fairly excited when new people get involved. I think one of the problems with those of us that are in the business and have done it for a while and done various aspects in the business is we take a lot of the excitement for granted, and so a continual addition of new people kind of keeps us well grounded and reminds us of how exciting a lot of this stuff can actually be.
That's a great point right there, because I think we can forget sometimes, or even if you're not in the business, but maybe you've been hunting a long, long time. I think it can be pretty easy sometimes to just forget like the fun aspect of what we get to do with bird dogs and hunting, and seeing new land and territory. I think it's a cool thing we get to do.
It's very cool, and I think in the quest to be successful, we tend to forget some of the reasons maybe we enjoy dogs in the first place. And new people have a way of getting so excited over, to be honest, things that we may think are trivial on a daily basis. So it's like a lot of these hobby businesses. I think things tend to come in full circle, and in the beginning we're all questing to make a name for ourselves and be somebody that's important and all those ego type of things. But I think we all kind of circle back and get to, the enjoyment, and the people we work with really help with that, to be honest.
Absolutely. Were you running your kennel I know you mentioned you lived in Illinois for a little bit. Were you running your kennel up there as well, or did you just start that once you moved to Georgia?
No, we were doing it up there. I don't know exactly when I turned pro. In the spaniel world anyway, you're a pro because you get paid, and the ruling essentially is some type of compensation, whatever that definition is. So if you send me a gift certificate, you could argue that's compensation, but there's some interpretations to that. So sometime, I don't know, I'm going to say 03, 04, something like that, maybe. We turned pro, and we were in Illinois at that point. Hadn't quite moved out to the farm yet, but then we moved out to the farm, and then I think we moved south in maybe 2013, something like that.
Okay. And being in the South, I think you might have kind of mentioned, but does it just allow you to run dogs kind of year round to some degree, with the weather, the climate?
On our property, of course, the winter is the most advantageous. In the summer, it's hot. trust me, it's hot. But I think that a lot of people in the north say, "Oh, how can you do that?" Well, we were in the north, and you know what? In the winter, it's cold,
Mm.
and a lot of time in a barn, and being in Illinois and snow and so forth. So you just as a trainee, you mix and match the weather with what you can get accomplished. And in the north, maybe we're spending time inside buildings in the winter trying to do obedience. Here we're under the shade trees in the summer doing obedience. Is really the
Mm.
just the time of the year flip-flopped for us.
Sure, sure. So it shifts a little bit. Todd, why don't you back us up a little bit? Talk a little bit about your journey into, I guess, upland hunting and the bird dog world. Like, was this, did you come to this later in life? Was this something you grew up doing? Talk about your journey a little bit into the world of bird dogs and hunting.
I view it as like most people, but maybe that's not true. I grew up in northern New England, and I grew up hunting, and and bird hunting. Of course, in those days, I'm now an old timer, so I talk about how glorified everything was back then, and there were birds everywhere and cover everywhere, and you can go anywhere you wanted, and all those good things. But the reality is, I was a kid, and I went, wherever my dad took me, and of course, we had great dogs because my dad would never have anything but a good dog. And in hindsight, they
Mm.
probably weren't great dogs. They were whatever dogs were around, and all
But as
those
a
types of
kid, you
things.
thought
But
they were great.
of
Yeah.
course, of course, and
Yeah, of
and, you-
course.
and and as a kid, if you had game in the bag, that meant the dog was great because that was.
Mm.
I mean, in the
That was
truest sense,
success. Yeah,
that's what hunting is, right? Nobody goes
sure,
hunting to not get something.
sure.
But we hunted a lot of stuff. So grouse and woodcock, obviously. So, in those days, they released pheasants in New Hampshire, and then waterfowl, of course, down on the Cape as well as in the ponds and in the woodlands and so forth. So I was around a lot of different dogs, different types of dogs, and then like most of life, I got older and got interested in other things and kind of forgot about what I enjoyed when I was a kid, and got educated and all those types of things and went away from it. And then as I approached 30, 27, 30, something like that, I picked up a lab and just slowly started getting back into it. And I met some guys when I was duck hunting that they were using spaniels, and I'd never
Mm.
seen a spaniel in my life, or that I can recall anyway. And they were excited. They were jumping off of cliffs and breaking ice, and I said, "Heck, I want one of those." And one turned to two to three to five to quit your job and all those types of things. So,
They
um,
sucked you in.
you know, yeah, like I said, kind of like everybody else, I guess.
And so growing up, you said you hunted behind a lot of dogs. So you never had spaniels really when you were a kid,
No,
kind of
sir.
hunting behind. Okay.
No, mostly short hairs. Well, I can remember anyway. Short hairs, beagles, miscellaneous hounds, coyotes, that type of thing.
Okay.
Labs, chessies.
Okay.
That's
So
it
so
that I
quite the
can
variety there.
recall. Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. When was a turning point for you? Again, it sounds like once you kind of saw the spaniels, they kind of sucked you down this road here. What kind of then led you down the side of starting your own kennel and kind of the training side of things? Like what was a turning point for you there?
Um, Without getting too personal, grew up fairly simple, basic, and I think when you do that, it's all about money and possessions. And when I got out of college, started that chase, and a few things went my way, and so started to get you know successful economically and buying all the stuff that I thought was important. And sometimes those professions, it's all about the carrot in front of you, and then when you hit that carrot, whether it be a certain classification designation or something in your career or an economic level, um, the carrots kind of stop. And I think that's when you start to think, what matters. And for me, I need to survive like everybody, but I think suffice to say that, you know, making a boatload of money didn't really fulfill what I thought it was going to. So at that
Sure.
same time, I met these guys that had spaniels, and one thing just kind of, I guess, brought a passion out, or forgotten passion, or whatever the case may be. And I remember I was working in Manhattan, and I was out hunting in Iowa at the time, and I had a fairly flexible schedule. Worked on a performance base, so if you weren't in the office, it didn't matter because you only got paid for what you produce. So, but I
Sure.
was hunting in Iowa and caught a fair bit of flack. And even though you're not paid to be in the office, well, being from New England, we're known to be a little crass and direct, and so I just made it simple. I just quit and I never went home. So that kind of
You're like,
was
I'm done.
yeah, that was kind of okay, I guess you better figure this out. So was it Cortez that burned all the boats? When the
Oh yeah,
explorer?
yeah,
So
right,
that,
right. Burn them and
they had
never go back.
yeah. So I guess that was kind of the philosophy.
Yeah. It sounds like it worked out for you. Sounds like that was a good choice there. More time with bird dogs is
Yeah,
always a good choice in my mind.
yeah. The bank account used to be better, but clearly bad days are bad days are a whole lot better these days.
Right. Exactly. Tell me more about your kennel. What's your kennel called? What kind of dogs you train in? Give us an overview of the kennel you're running right now in Georgia.
Our Craney Hill Kennel is, what it's named. Usually these days, it's just my name is. Everybody seems to shift to that. I think nobody really remembers a kennel day with kennel
Sure.
name with few exceptions, but predominantly Springers and English Cockers. We used to take in some different types of dogs, and we ran labs for a while. Upland only, not retriever games.
Okay.
And but we've really now specialized in high end spaniels, those two breeds predominantly. Every once in a while I do take another breed in. I get bored, and I think that if you want to really be good at this, a lot of times taking in a problem dog or a different breed or something like that makes you think and have to get back to trying to figure things out, which then I firmly believe benefits the dogs that I love so much, being in the Springers. So I think that again, as you go through life and experience, you start to view things a little bit differently. And where there was a time frame where I only wanted the best dogs.
Mm.
The truth is, most people can do something with those dogs, and so that only works as long as you continue to have them. But when something doesn't go well, if you don't have a toolbox of things to use to to try to work with a problem dog, you're certainly you know uh, in a defensive position with that. So I do
Sure.
take
It
an
kind of gives you a
occasional
new challenge,
problem
right?
dog.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I love the dogs. Don't get me wrong, and this is all I want to do. And my wife can tell you she's so sick of the only thing I talk about, the only thing I dwell on. Honestly, it is the only thing in my life. My brain has one compartment, and it's only for this. But that being said, on some level, it does become a job, and so
Sure.
changing things up, is healthy for our dogs, not only me.
Yeah. Are you primarily getting? And again, I don't want to generalize this for all trainers and kennels like that, but typically, will you get dogs who are like, on the younger side who don't have those problems going into it, or are you getting some of the older dogs of someone saying, hey, like I got a 2, 3, 4-year-old dog, they're not doing this, can you help fix that? Are you getting kind of a mix of both, or is it more on you're getting the 1-year-old dog and you can kind of start them up
Not
from the ground up?
not much of a mix anymore because we're just so busy,
Okay.
and we've fortunately we can really pick and choose,
Mm,
and it's hard to get access to me. Almost all communication is done through Christina, and she filters because I'm just too
sure.
busy, helping the people that we work with. But we have a puppy program where we try to we'll talk more in detail later on some of your notes I see here, but
Sure.
briefly, we have a puppy program where we try to get them going right away, off on the right foot.
Okay.
But as I said earlier, we do take some older dogs, maybe not a quarter of the kennel, but some number like that, where they're a
Okay.
little bit older. Some of those older dogs are from experienced people that we know.
Mm.
So we know there's a certain level. They're just trying to tweak something to get a champion or win a national or something like that. Or
Okay.
it's, as I said, something that interests me.
Mm.
So
a new
if
challenge, a
it's
new project.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Well, I'm really excited, Todd, to kind of unpack the Spaniels more with you. Again, if you've listened to my show for any amount of time, or anyone has, we talk a lot of pointing breeds, a lot of pointing dogs. So the Spaniels are definitely intriguing to me, and so I'm excited to unpack those more with you here. Before we go any further, I want to kind of get to know you a little bit more, and talk to me a little bit about what's some of the hunting or kind of hunting that you're doing with your dogs these days or over the last few years. Are you taking trips out west, east? Like, what kind of birds are you hunting, and how was last season for you?
Every season's good, because it means I'm not working, so that's good. It's a good time. I guided for a number of years, lots of different states across the country and different game birds. But when we stopped guiding for wild pheasants, and I'm going to say 2010, something like that. Christine had enough of that, enough of some of the risk that go into guiding people.
Oh, I'm sure.
To be honest, if Christina never sees a pheasant again, she would be more than than happy with that. Okay, um, but for me, I would go back and do more pheasant hunting.
Mm,
But Christina does photography, and there's something about being in the woods in the fall and having grown up
mm.
with grouse and woodcock hunting the past boy, I don't know, 8-10 years now. It's been predominantly grouse and woodcock, and
Okay.
so these days we've been going to Michigan. We went to Maine, for years, because obviously that's like going home for me. We've done
Sure.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, but a couple of things that happened. We probably would still be going to Maine, except for COVID hit, and they had
Okay.
the, you know, you know, I forget what it was, a 2-week quarantine or something. Well, there was no chance I was
Sure.
packing everything up, going to Maine to sit in the cabin for two
Sitting for,
weeks, and
oh gosh.
and of course we're in business, so it's not the same as if I wasn't in business. You know what? I would have got, to be honest, I would have gone up there and just hunted all I wanted and not worried about
Sure.
it.
There's
But
ways around it, right?
you're yeah, but you're in business, which means you're a
Sure.
target, and you got to be
Mhm.
careful. So we ended up going to Michigan. We got some clients up there that bought dogs and so forth. So we talked to them. We went to Michigan. I'd never been before, and truly, it's wonderful. I don't find the bird numbers to be the same as they were in Maine. Certainly not the same as Wisconsin and Minnesota. But I'm not getting any younger. Our clientele's not getting any younger, and the woods are fairly clean.
Yeah.
Meaning, Maine is absolutely a commercial forest, a lot of deadfall and slash, and it's really rough going. Where Michigan, it's not. We're not up in the UP, which is closer to Maine type of hunting,
Okay.
but we're in the upper lower Michigan, and so the birds aren't as plentiful. However, our clientele can walk much easier through
Mm,
the woods, as I can as well, and
yeah.
and there's enough birds. And these days, Will, to be honest, we're hunting because we're questing game, and that's really what hunting is, questing game. But we're training. We're going up there with our
Mm,
with all of our dogs, whoever's in the kennel for training and so forth. But it's really about young dogs learning to quest
mm,
wild game. The older
sure.
dogs have been through it so many years; they're probably not going to become a better bird dog at this point. But the
Yeah.
young dogs, it's really where we're separating, who is worth continuing to work with, versus a dog that it's a nice dog and someone that hunts, a bunch of times. They're going to be very happy, but for a really diehard hunter or someone that's trying to
Yeah.
win a national, maybe that's not the right dog. So it's a testing,
Sure. Yeah.
ground for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
Sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong. Sounds like it's not, maybe not about bag limits. Really, it's really about developing those bird dogs. Time out in the woods. Time with your clients.
Without a doubt, we're again in the I guess the full circle deal. We're old enough now. When you're a kid, you just want to kill, and it's about telling everybody what you got and so forth. And
Hmm.
and then things morph, and so I don't carry a gun that often. I would ideally like to, if we could shoot one grouse in the bag for each of the young dogs over the course of the
Sure.
season,
That's
that
a
would be
success right
success.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're trying to shoot the right bird. Where the dog produces it or did something where there's a connection there that this helps the dog put one and one together equal two, as opposed to
Hmm.
just snapshot. And how grouse is, they just lots of times they just jump. Well, if I
Hmm.
shoot that, then that's fine for the bag, but there's really nothing that happened with the dog.
Sure.
So and we also we've got a bunch of dogs. So I think Michigan the limit is 4. To be honest, I never pay attention because it's really it doesn't
You're not
matter.
getting close. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But with a truck full of dogs, you have to shoot your limit every day, day
Hmm.
after day after day, if it was about getting a bunch of birds for every dog. So
Right.
yeah.
That's a
We did do some pheasant. I'm sorry, we did do some pheasant hunting last year. We got a client out in
okay.
Iowa, so we went out to his farm, and we did some training before the national out there running on wild birds. And it
Okay.
was, I mean, it was nice because we haven't been doing that, but
Yeah.
that's what we're doing lately.
That's awesome. That sounds like a nice. I don't talk to a ton of guests that are kind of on the East Coast or Michigan, Wisconsin area. I probably should get more grouse and woodcock hunters on this podcast. Is there? I'm guessing there's a lot of public land, right? The forests are mainly public land. Is that correct?
It's almost entirely on public ground.
Okay,
So
so you
like
got
out
options.
east so Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, state forest, national forest. Depending on the state, there's some commercial forest stuff. So if an owner takes the commercial forest tax benefit, then they have to allow access for hunting. And some states call it
Okay.
differently. Now, Maine is very unique. So Maine is one of the last states where if it's not posted, you can hunt it. Now that
Okay.
doesn't mean you should, right? Because depending
Right.
on where homes are, and like any state, when you're from away, it's good to know some of the local acceptance and so
Sure.
forth. But
Sure.
in Maine, I forget what the number is now, but there's very low number of landowners in Maine, and I'm going to say it's 6 or 8 paper companies that
Hmm.
own, it might be 6 or 7 million acres that is
Wow.
wide open, and it's a tradition there, and it's changing. People from away buy ground and put up gates and those types of things, but
Sure.
there's a long history of like the North Maine woods alone, I think, is about 4 million acres or something like that. And
Oh
once you
wow.
go through the gate, I mean, there's camps up there. There's a history of them allowing people to build camps on that ground up there,
Wow.
and they lease it for 100 years, the ground or whatever it is. So it's another thing about grouse and woodcock hunting is you don't have to knock on doors.
Yeah, you got a lot of
You can just
options. Like you got 4 million
you.
acres to
Yep,
to
that's
poke
right.
around at.
That's right. I mean, Idaho.
Jeez.
We were in Idaho in the late 2000s, and we're in the Clearwater, and what's the other one, the Nez Perce or whatever, national forest there. It was like almost 5 million acres or something just in those two places alone. We
Oh
never
my gosh.
saw another bird hunter. I
Oh
mean,
my
it's just
gosh.
mammoth. You would know that out, being in Colorado,
Sure.
just, you go up to the flat tops or something. It's just endless.
Right. Yeah. That's crazy. And then talking grouse and woodcock just for a second here. So as far as like forest goes, can you talk to me
Mhm.
a little bit about, and you mentioned like deadfall, like old forest versus clean forest. Like, are you looking for more of the deadfall forest, and why is that? Or can you talk to me a little bit about
Uh,
the conditions of the different forests?
so, like most wildlife, clear cuts help. Okay, so
Okay.
you know, commercial forest is very beneficial to grouse and woodcock because it creates new fresh cover and lots of trees shooting up and buds and food and all those types of
Okay.
things. Fire is good. So mature forest, which is a lot of the national forests these days, is not particularly strong, particularly out east because they're almost anti-cutting of any type. Out east.
Okay.
But in Wisconsin, counties like Price County is famous for grouse hunting up around Park Falls and so forth. And the counties go in and have a whole cutting management program on all their property because it's a huge tourist draw to get the bird hunters to come in. And so typically with grouse, I think historically, 10 or 12-year-old growth seems to be something that people are looking for in aspen stands. And, I take a little bit different approach. This is something that happened to me. So when I was a kid, we grew up hunting grouse and woodcock. Well, in New England, there were all these old farms that the woodlands took back. There were all these abandoned farms. And so there were apple trees all through the middle of the woods and all, and you read anything on grouse and woodcock, all these Spiller and all these great stories. It was very traditional. Well, when I got back into grouse and woodcock, let's call it 2010 or something like that. I mean, we went out east, back home to Maine, and I knew nothing. I couldn't find a bird because the diseases and stuff that came through, and as the logging programs change, the forest wasn't anything like it was when I was a kid. Well, I didn't remember that. I just, I didn't know. So these days, I run into so many people that they hunt aspen and everything says, well, look for the aspen, look for the aspen. And I'm sure there are birds in there because a million people can't be wrong. But I got to tell you,
Sure.
we stink in aspen. We just don't find the bird numbers in aspen like everybody writes about, to be honest. I mean, so we tend to find it more, let's call it transitional cover between woodcock and grouse, where grouse don't necessarily like it particularly wet, but right where, the damp ground is starting to go into some water spillway or something where woodcock would be, where the ground is soft. Right in that transition is where we seem to find more and more birds. So, a mixed forest, I guess, is probably what we're looking for more. And some of that also could be that, we're training dogs. And so when you go into a young alder stand where you can't swing your gun and those types of things, it's kind of a mono stand to me. So I don't find it particularly exciting to look at. And who the heck wants to be up there when the snow comes and when the leaves are finally down? So,
right.
Some of it could just be, to be honest, some of it could just be a function of when we're there and, those types of things. But, later on you were going to ask the question about what advice and so forth. And, every time we have people come up and, to run their dogs and train with us in the woods. And we just tell them over and over again, the single greatest thing that you can do, I believe, is just go for it. Just stop listening to everybody else. Just go for it. And if you observe, you'll find out. If you see birds, just pause. What are you in? What trees are around? What berries are around? What's the ground cover like? What time of day is it? I mean, be a student. I think like, people used to be, and I didn't grow up thinking I was a student at all. This is what we did for recreation.
Sure.
So you just absorbed this knowledge. Well, now people have to make an attempt to gain that knowledge. It seems to be the norm. So when you're in that environment, just really observe what is around you. Then go look for that stuff. I mean, I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest.
Yeah, that's such good advice, Todd, because it's, and sometimes we can get caught up in, oh my gosh, we saw a bird, and then you keep going and you miss a moment and miss an opportunity to look around and go, okay, this was the habitat they were in. This is what time it was. This, just to learn. So, cause then your next hunt, you go out, your next time you're trying to find birds, like you learn something, and now you can use that knowledge to apply it really. And so I think that's really, really good advice.
And you can pass it on,
right?
Which I think is the important thing. So we have a client down here in Georgia, a young kid. He's got a couple kids, and he's busy and all that. But he's new to all this. So he's a successful guy, so he has some flexibility. Well, he calls me, and he was going to be he had one day to hunt in Maine. Okay, so I don't know. I have no clue what he was doing up there, but he had one free day, so he was thinking of going to this one section, and he was going to call a guide. And so, he just called me to see what I thought, and I said, well, if you're willing to go to X location, I'll tell you a bunch of places. And he's like, well, how do you know the birds will be there? I'm like, I don't. I haven't been there in 6 years or whatever it is. But grouse tend to live in a very small location their entire life. It's not like pheasants where if they get pushed off, they'll fly 3/4 of a mile and live there forever unless they're pushed off of that again. So, I just gave him, he went and got the map. And so we talked over the phone. I had him follow this dirt road, that dirt road. Okay, mark that spot on the map. He went up there and he found birds in all the places I told him, which, is interesting because grouse and woodcock hunting, shoot all you want. You are never going to decimate them because of overhunting. It's just not going to happen because you can't possibly, find enough of them, shoot enough of them. It's just
that's tough hunting.
It's hard work.
It's hard work. You're in thick, trees and forests and stuff. Have not done it yet. I definitely want to, but it seems like it's just a tough hunt.
Very rewarding. Very rewarding.
That's cool, though. That's cool. What was maybe a standout moment for you this past season? What's maybe something? I know you've been at this for quite a while, many years. What's something new that you're learning? Season after season with your dogs being out in the woods.
I'm amazed how much the woodcock continue to run and run more. So, years ago when I was young and all the stories, grouse would run. And a lot of times there isn't much ground cover on the forest floor, so it was very easy for them to run. And dogs had to take birds across a lot of bare ground. And then they would flush when they felt threatened or they ran out of cover. Well, the woodcock tend to be known for holding tight and not flying very far, and I think that still applies. However, I'm amazed how much they are running. And so, when you get an opportunity for a woodcock to be running where you can see it on the forest floor, now the dog may not see it, the dog's still trying to trail it, but you can see it running off. It's pretty remarkable to me. So I used to, if the dog starts to take a moving bird, hey, that's a grouse. Well, these days I'm not so sure anymore. Because
you're kind of like, I don't know.
They're running so much. So I think that's an evolution deal. And I think
is that a change with? Sorry, I cut you off. Was that a change in some of the habitat on the ground of why maybe, or just?
I don't know. I'm guessing it's just evolution.
Okay.
So woodcock nest on the ground. Okay, they have their babies on the ground and so forth. So I guess it would stand to reason that they're at risk. More risk because they're on the ground. So maybe it's just evolution. I don't know. I'm not finding woodcock in necessarily different cover than I recall finding them in. So I don't, to my simple eye, I don't see a change there, but they definitely are running more. And what for me selfishly, what is great about that is that the Spaniel is becoming a better and better grouse and woodcock dog because the Spaniel's claim to fame is taking running pheasants. They are absolutely deadly at it. It is what they do better than any other breed. Okay, so
running grouse or woodcock,
it plays to their strength. To be honest, the pointing dogs, which grouse and woodcock still is a pointing dog game, clearly. But if they actually hold point and they don't self-relocate, which in my world is break-in, we just allow it because it helps us get birds. But if they don't self-relocate, running bird just keeps running off and you can't catch up to it because your pointers wait until you get to it and you release it, and the game just continues and continues. So unless you can pin the bird in a little patch of cover or something, you're really at a disadvantage. So the more that these birds are going to be running, I think that plays to the Spaniel's strength. So plus
Absolutely.
It's just if you hunt, the adrenaline of when the dog's on game. It's a different level.
It's coming soon.
A lot of fun. That's right. Boy, I hope I'm ready. I'm ready.
Right. That's why pheasants and pointing dogs and pheasants are love-hate relationship.
Absolutely.
We get those running roosters, and that's so tough. That's so tough. Oh man. Well, let's transition to the talking a little bit more about these spaniels. Again, sounds like primarily are you running English cockers and springers primarily, or are
Yes,
you
sir.
working, or do you
Yes,
have
sir.
any other breeds?
And, right now, nope, nothing else in the kennel. I mean, we've had most of the spaniel breeds in the past. Well, we have a client that she's got her first Springer, but she's been doing Welsh Springer Spaniels for, I don't know, 30, 40 years or whatever. So, we help her with her Welsh. And we've put some titles on some Field Spaniels, and we've helped, same thing with Clumbers, and uh, couple American cockers as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
But predominantly these days, it's just to be honest, Will, we're at a high level and we command high level pricing, and there are no field trials for any of the spaniels other than springers and cockers,
Oh,
and
okay.
so
So only springers and
if you
cockers can run in the
yeah.
trials that you're running. Okay.
Correct. American cockers can run as well, but we don't see
Okay.
very many of them anymore.
Okay.
So, with that being said, these other breeds are left with hunt tests, and without being pompous, the standard for hunt test is different than the spaniel for trying to win the standard for trying to win a national. So, um,
Okay.
the reality is, a lot of people don't need us.
Mm,
So
okay.
if they have those minor breeds and they like those minor breeds, we live in America. You like chocolate, get chocolate. I mean, I think that's wonderful,
Sure.
but we're pretty adamant. When people call us, trying to feel them out, because if they don't need us, I'm going to send them on their way, because it's going to be a bad
Sure.
fit. To be honest.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to kind of unpack maybe a little bit more of both the cocker and the springer. Yeah, the springer I definitely have not talked about a lot on the show. Would you mind kind of just giving me a little overview of what kind of dog the springer is? What do they excel in? Just cover some things like temperament, training. I mean, if you have any
sure.
personal history of the springer, would love to kind of hear more about them.
So it's a medium-sized dog. I think historically, it common thought is it originated in Spain, and then came over the UK and so forth. And it's like most of the breeds; it's a mixture of lots of different breeds. And but in the end, they were originally used to spring game to a net. Okay, so
Hmm.
the hunter gatherers would use a net, and the springer would go in there, and we say flush, but essentially try to put the birds to wing to get caught in the net. And so back in the day, they clearly went in the game fairly slow, right, cautiously, more like nature. To be honest, if you ever watch a coyote actually hunt, it's a lot
Okay.
of pouncing and pausing and so forth.
Hmm.
Well, then over time, things morphed into, um, clearly not modern day springers, but there was a time where in the same litter you'd have springers and cockers, and they would get registered one to the other based on size.
Hmm.
So then, the cocker kept going this way and the springers went that way. And so, you had these clearly distinct breeds. Um, they came over to the States. There was a guy, Talbot Radcliffe, from the UK, that saw the US trials, because the trials in the UK are a fair bit different than they are here.
Okay.
And he's figured out, what, I can make a dog that they need in the States. He was a business guy. And for a long time, he created these springers. His kennel was Satan Kennels, and they just dominated in the U.S. I mean, just absolutely
Mm.
cleaned up in the U.S. And what he did is he gave some leg to the springers. And, I think it's common knowledge that he did some breeding with setters and so forth. And back in that day, you could do that and then register them as purebred so many generations later. I don't
Hmm.
recall the exact specifics on that.
Sure.
So he got a
And
bigger run
real quick,
in.
sorry, real quick, Todd,
Mhm.
were there already springers over here, or no? There was
There
other
were,
trials
yes,
that
sir.
there were. Okay, so then he brought kind
There,
of
there,
his
there, there
line.
were. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So a lot of the dogs from the UK were here, but they tend to be shorter legged, a little bulkier. He really added speed and size and a slimmer built dog that could do that. And part of the reason here is that we have more, we have rough shooting here. In the UK, they really don't. In the UK, it's for the wealthy, and it's all about, I call it a deer drive, where they're just driving birds to the gunners to shoot them when they come out of the woodland. Okay. So he did that, and, that was, he won the English championship, I think, in 1950. So it was after that, right up, probably the heyday into the 70s and 80s, I guess. And so most of our dogs go back to something involved with him, however far back. But, they've gotten bigger, clearly, a little big for me, to be honest. There's a lot of males running that are, 50 pounds. And I think that's big for a spaniel myself. Our
but
males
his goal when he was doing remind me his name again.
Talbot Radcliffe.
Was he trying to make the dogs a little slimmer, a little more agile? Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Give them more legs so they could cover more ground.
Okay, but do you think some of it's going down the opposite way now?
Well, I think that after him, we've added bulk to those frames. And so now we're getting 50 pound dogs, where, our males tend to be close to the 40, 42 pounds.
Gotcha.
But, I would say the average male in the field trial circuit these days is upper 40s now. Gotcha. Which, I think they're becoming more like setters, not pointing like a setter, obviously, but size, size wise. So, the old timers had a saying that, they had a couple of things because springers and cockers have been linked for so long. They said that you took your springer hunting and you went hunting with your cocker. And then the other thing they would say is that springers are great soldiers, and every cocker wants to be a general. And so that gets to the temperament of the two is, the springer, I believe the springer tends to have a more level personality, can go to work on a daily basis and take, repetition, not to the level of a lab, but it can take repetition to a level much better than the cocker, because the cockers all have an opinion. They all think they're in charge. And so the cockers can be a little independent. Okay. So right now, with all the cocker craze going on, they're the soup du jour or dog of the month or whatever. And particularly down here in the, in the Southeast, it's cocker, and they're replacing the lab on all things. The cockers is a very difficult dog to train, at a high level. They're very manipulative. Of course, they're cute as a button, and they always are having fun. So they make you laugh, every day. Well, trust me, they use that to their advantage. Okay, so
they're going to get what they want.
They are. So I, even though everybody loves them, I think for new people, it is just not a good dog. To be honest, I think a more experienced person is better with them. Now, if you're going to let the dog do whatever it wants, it doesn't matter. I mean, if it's just going to be like a normal pet that runs the household, probably really doesn't matter. But if you're trying to, train to a high level, I think it does matter. So I think experienced people are better with it.
Would you then say, let's just take an average hunter, maybe fairly new? Would you then point them to maybe towards more of the springer then for trainability reasons, or?
Without a doubt. If they said, I want a spaniel, I think there should be no consideration after a springer. I really do. Because, somebody new, I make mistakes every day. The odds are that I've made it before, or I'm reading a situation and can get myself out of it. When we're new, we make mistakes, but we don't even know we made the mistake. Well, the springer is just going to be, you don't know. Like, you don't know what questions to ask. Sure. But the springer is going to be more forgiven. Cockers will hold a grudge. They definitely will hold a grudge. So Yeah, that's my opinion anyway. And we do both of them.
Yeah,
we run
good.
both in trials. I know a lot
Right.
of cocker people that I really respect, but I just think they're different.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about so with a Springer, and maybe this can bleed into the cocker too. Is there with like is there a show line, and then there's like the field bred Springers? That is actually a wrap of part 1 of the conversation with Todd Agnew from Spaniel Journal. We're going to break this up into a part 2 episode coming in just a couple days. We unpack actually a lot more. Didn't love making it a 2-hour episode, so broke it up into 2 parts. Just kind of decided that. So you get to look forward to another one dropping here in just a couple days as we finish up our conversation, unpacking Springers, cockers, field trials, and really just the bird dog world, and a whole lot more. So make sure you stay tuned. You're subscribed to the podcast. Make sure you share this episode if you enjoyed it. And as always, if you can take a quick minute, go leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Would greatly appreciate that. It would really help the show get out there and keep growing like it has. So hey, make sure to get signed up at patreon.com for the Gunner Kennels fan kit giveaway, and we'll talk to you very soon. Go put some miles on those boots and follow your favorite bird dog. Take care.